Thank you for checking out Murder Dictionary Podcast. I just wanted to give a quick disclaimer that we are still learning the ropes of audio and podcasting in general. The sound quality and content will get better as we get more experience, so please bear with us through this learning curve. We focus mostly on the murderers, so some listeners may feel that the subject is approached too lightheartedly and with a lack of focus on the victims. Although we want to be sensitive to that, we cannot help but focus on the details or facts that we find most fascinating. And for us, that is often the life of the murderer and the details of the crimes. We appreciate you checking us out and hope that you are also interested in the stories that we are intrigued enough by to explore. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and don't forget to subscribe on iTunes. Hello, and thank you for checking out Murder Dictionary Podcast. My name is Brianna, and with me is Kelly.
Hey.
Before we get started, I'd like to remind you that we are on social media, on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and Patreon. So it would be awesome if you could follow us there. We have a bunch of serial killer memes and breaking news about crimes going on and new serial killers. And there's been a lot of news actually lately.
Tons of news. Brendan
Todd
Dassey.
Kohlhepp, Brendan Dassey, so much. So I've been slacking a little bit on the serial killer memes, but I'll get back to it. But you can find a whole bunch of information there.
Love our Instagram.
Yes, definitely. So also it would be awesome if you could rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast. That would be wonderful. We'd really appreciate us. And if you could tell your friends and your family and any of your true crime junkie friends just like us that we are out here, that would be wonderful as well.
People at the bus stop, shout it out.
Strangers, please go to the corner and yell about us.
Yeah. Tag us in every bathroom, tag us in the library, tag us on walls.
For a good time, listen to Murder Dictionary Podcast. All right. So today we're going to be talking about exonerations. I feel like this is a subject where most of the time I'm getting really upset about lenient sentencing, you know, just like, oh, crimes against women or crimes committed by white people, or they just get off so easily. But this one is equally as compelling to me just because it's so tragic. Every story is just years and years of people's lives just gone.
Yeah.
And it just feels like there's that nightmare. I don't know how many people have it. I think it's pretty common of just being in the middle of a surgery and waking up from anesthesia. That's what this reminds me of. And I know, I mean, personally, I've had a lot of medical stuff, so that's more personal for me, but that's what it feels like is you're just trapped in this situation and there's nothing you can do, just the helplessness. Yeah. So anyway, so this subject is really compelling and tragic. And so instead of talking about the psychology like I usually like to start off with, I actually found some statistics that I found are really, really horrific and jaw-dropping. So I wanted to share those with you guys. So approximately 4% of those sentenced to be executed are innocent.
4%?
Yes. 4.
Yeah,
my God. An astounding 125 exonerations were recorded in 2014 alone.
That's too many.
Yeah.
Well, no, actually not too many. It's too many for it to be happening, but
yeah,
that's good that there was at least 100. It's better than 0.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm glad that there's people that are being exonerated, but it's also just like, how are we getting this so wrong?
Yes. There's got to be something wrong with the criminal justice system.
Absolutely. So there's an exoneration every 3 days in this country. As of 2015, 1,579 people had been exonerated since 1989. And that's according to the National Registry of Exonerations. 70% of exonerees are minorities, 47% alone are African American, and 99% are males.
What does that fucking tell you about our country?
Right. It just speaks volumes. It's just horrific. When, of course, discussing exonerations, you have to get into the Innocence Project. They have just done so much work to get wrongfully imprisoned people freed. They also need to be discussed because they have the most information, statistics, studies about the subject. The work that they do is just so important. So they were founded in 1992 by Barry Scheck and Peter Newfield. And since then, they have freed 347 people.
347 of the 1579 people that have been exonerated from 1989 is a great number.
Yeah.
I think so.
Absolutely. They're amazing. So according to them, the Innocent Project, the average amount of time served was 14 years.
What?
Yes.
That's average. Average.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm going to pass out.
The years served by the Innocence Project exonerees alone totaled approximately 4,750 as of 2015.
You know how much money that cost the state too? That's just
it's
the trial.
It is awful, the implications as far as on our taxes and the state funding, but also, I mean, it's the years of their lives.
Well, yeah, that's the most important. That's the most important part. Let's not forget that. It's that their life is taken away, but
it is
also,
just like, even for the people that don't give a fuck about the victims of these wrongful convictions, even those, like, I'm just envisioning super, super conservative people. And not to be a jerk, but I don't know, maybe that's biased, but people that have a bias towards these minorities and wrongfully convicted people, I feel like they could get behind that of just like, it still impacts the state, even if you don't care about their lives, it still impacts us. So the Innocence Project has also identified the real killers in 147 of those 347 cases.
Get them.
Yes. I love the work they do. That's just amazing to me. The Innocence Project has had to close 22% of their cases because DNA evidence was missing or had been destroyed. So they start working on these cases, and 22% of them, you can't do anything because they got rid of the evidence. Like, oh my God.
So you can't fix it. You can't prove anything. You can't bring anything back up. It's basically their conviction is their conviction. You can appeal as many times as you want.
Yeah, there's just nothing you can do.
We lost the DNA.
Right? My God.
Oh, you needed that?
But they don't care. I think it's just carelessness. Like, oh, we got him. They're in jail. Who the fuck cares? I'm destroying this evidence.
Yeah, of course. We don't need it anymore.
Right. Like, we got what we wanted, so fuck you. About 3,000 prisoners write to the Innocence Project each year, and at any given time, the Innocence Project is evaluating 6,000 to 8,000 potential cases.
Jesus.
There are many reasons why wrongful convictions occur. The most common reason is false eyewitness identification. In the Innocence Project's studies, eyewitness testimony played a role in more than 75% of wrongful convictions.
These statistics are so high.
It's just,
like, what a fucking terrible, not a good success rate. Like,
yeah, obviously we're doing something wrong. And it, again, just, a lot of it just speaks to racism. It's just so much of it. Unreliable or improper forensic science played a role in about 50% of Innocence Project cases. Scientific techniques such as bite mark comparison and fiber analysis were widely used but are now sought to be more subjective.
Yeah, like even back in the day too, when they were using pubic hair, they're like, this is a black man's pubic hair.
Oh, I've heard that so many times in cases. I'm like,
crazy.
Oh my God.
Where
like,
now they have mitochondrial DNA that you can get off the pubic hairs. But like
instead
back
of
then,
just a random person looking at it, just
this
being
is
like,
a curly hair. Like, fuck you, dude.
Gross, dude. Come on.
Yeah, that's what has gotten people convicted.
Right. It's unbelievable.
And there's those people that, like, even with DNA too, like that one lady that got caught and she tampered with like 50,000 cases. She was a DNA analyst.
I remember that.
Yeah, a DNA analyst, and she had tampered and people
destroyed and ruined so many cases.
Yeah, so now they're all getting, I hope, new trials.
I hope so. They better. Mm-hmm. In about 25% of DNA exoneration cases, innocent people were coerced or threatened into making incriminating statements or false confessions. Approximately 10% of the Innocence Project's DNA exoneration cases had pled guilty to crimes that they didn't commit, often with the promise of reducing their sentence or even avoiding the death penalty.
Fucking trap.
It's just so common. It's so unbelievably common that they get these people in rooms and just badger them and bully them into saying that they did something that they didn't do. It's unbelievable.
And you're in rooms for hours and hours. And hours. So I would break
sometimes
too.
Days. Sometimes it goes through to 2 or 3 days. Mm-hmm. And you also see what you saw kind of in, you know, the good example of that is Making a Murderer with Brendan Dassey. Mm-hmm. Again, it's just, you saw them telling him he could go home.
Yeah.
And that's what they do.
Yeah.
They say that and I know that it takes a certain intelligence level to believe that, and I feel bad saying that, but it's just like, you shouldn't believe that. If you're a smart person, you'd know that that's not the case, but there's so many times that they're playing on the fact or relying on the fact that someone is going to be uneducated, poor, impoverished, you know, just not know any better and just be, unfortunately, I hate to say it, but too dumb to know that they're lying.
And if they had the evidence, they wouldn't be asking any questions.
Right.
So that's why if you ever get questioned by the cops, am I being charged and with what charges? If not, I'm out. Like, I don't care how that looks. Just now I know that not being younger, I would be like, well, I'm just going to tell the cops because
I think there's just a certain amount of deductive reasoning that you develop over time or that you have from a young age that the people that are maybe a little bit slower, that are oftentimes being caught up in these situations are, they just don't have it. I just feel bad saying that that's a part of it, but really it is, you know? Mm-hmm. So we're going to start off with the first person to be exonerated, Kirk Bloodsworth. And he was the first man who was on actually death row, but he was freed because of DNA evidence.
Go DNA. All right, so on July 25th, 1984, 2 young boys were fishing in a small pond behind an apartment complex when they witnessed 9-year-old Dawn Hamilton walk off into the woods with a man they described as skinny, 6'5", with a bushy mustache and blonde hair. They were the last people to see her alive. Hours later, Dawn's body was found lying face down in the woods. The next day, an autopsy found that the manner of death was strangulation and blunt force trauma to the head.
One of the really awful things that I saw about this case, and it's just, I'm just a visual person, so when I read things, I just, I see it or like I relate it to something, and I read that when they found her, she had one of those like little girl purses. And it was found with her body.
No.
That's just, and she was still wearing it. Like she had one of those little like Barbie purses or whatever. And yeah, just the visual of that. And it's just so tragic. So sad.
I'm going to hang out on the edge of the woods and just stop every day. Right. Be like,
you shall not pass.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially if you have a kid.
Definitely. I'm only stopping.
If you're with a kid or a woman, just no.
No, you're getting fucking, I'm going to be a detective.
Right.
Where are you going? At the time of the murder, former Marine Kirk Bloodsworth did not live in the area. He was not 6'5", skinny, nor was he blonde with a bushy mustache. He was 6 foot, brawny redhead, with mutton chop sideburns, who had worn glasses since age 5. Arrested within 3 weeks of the murder, Kirk maintained his innocence from day one, assuming somehow, someway, the police would realize they had the wrong man and the nightmare would end.
I just can't believe his description was so different. It's just crazy.
Doesn't everyone look the same in like the late 70s? Like mutton chops, mustaches, bushy something. Bush is definitely in every person's description, right?
They all
male
look
or
like
female.
They could be in Led Zeppelin or Jimi Hendrix Experience. Yes. You either had a fro or long hair. There were 2 types of people, nothing else.
But you definitely had a mustache.
Yeah,
right?
every time. Some facial hair.
He had witnesses who could place him at home at the time of the murder, and there was no physical evidence that linked Kirk to the crime scene. Despite all of this, Kirk was ultimately convicted by his slim resemblance to a composite drawing based on eyewitness testimony of the young 2 boys and the eyewitness identification of 3 others, one of which identified Kirk after seeing him on the news.
That's just terrible.
That's fucked. Just by, like, I mean, dude, you just need to get, like, 6 people that all fucking hate you and then just point you out and be like, oh, she definitely did it. I was there. I saw her. And they're like, okay. Bloodsworth was ultimately found guilty, but the Maryland Court of Appeals overturned Bloodsworth's conviction in 1986 after finding that the prosecution had illegally withheld potentially exculpatory evidence from the defense. However, Bloodsworth was retried, convicted again, and sentenced to 2 life terms. So you had a fucked up defense in the beginning, basically, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it's definitely the fault of his defense.
Yeah, it's the prosecution, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It had withheld information. And then you get retried, you get a mistrial or whatever, you get a new trial, and then they convict you again.
Yeah. It's awful that he was convicted again, but the only good thing was that it was reduced from the death penalty
to 2
life.
Yeah.
Initially. So, I mean, at least he would, I mean, who knows? He could have been killed. If the DNA evidence had not been found, he would have been killed.
Mm-hmm.
That's just awful.
So, even though appeals were made, the conviction and sentence was not overturned. I feel like that's like winning $1 million, like the lottery, and then they're like, psych. Like, you know, people have the fake scratchers with like 10,000 on them, and you're like, I'm out, I'm free, and then nope. Not at all. So in 1992, Bloodsworth read an account of how the new technology of DNA fingerprinting had led to conviction of a murder suspect. Hoping to prove his innocence, he pushed to have the evidence against him tested by the then novel method. Initially, the available evidence in the case, traces of semen in the victim's underwear, was thought to have been destroyed. However, it was eventually located in a paper bag in the judge's chambers.
Why?
Yeah, isn't it supposed to be in an evidence room?
Yeah, that's just really suspect.
Was he sniffing him? I don't know, like, that's how he gets ready, just...
Let me go to this trial.
Yeah. Testing proved that the semen did not match Bloodsworth's DNA profile. In 1993, Bloodsworth was released. By that time, he had spent almost 9 years in prison, 2 of them on death row. Bloodsworth was released on June 28, 1993. He was the first U.S. death row prisoner to be cleared by DNA. In December 1994, Maryland Governor William Donald Schaefer granted Bloodsworth a full pardon based on innocence. Which is good, too, because sometimes they make you plea, you know, like where you still have that on your record or whatever, and then you get out.
Or that weird situation with the West Memphis 3.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm referring to, where but they did it, right? Didn't they?
They basically agreed that they were guilty, it seems.
Yeah.
It was a weird thing. I don't remember the term for it, but it was super, super rare. Like, the last case of it was something like 100 years ago or something crazy.
It's so ridiculous. But then some people have so much pride to where they're like, they do that, where they're like, just take it.
Even in the West Memphis 3, Damien Eccles had said, he was like, I didn't want to do this, but because I think it was
his wife, right?
No, I think it was one of the other accused, Miss Kelly, I think, or one of the other ones. He was like, because there were 2 other people involved, if it was just me, I never would have said I'm guilty. Yeah. But because it's 2 other people and that's what they wanted, of course, I have to look out for their lives.
Yeah,
you
good
know?
for him.
Yeah. I love me some Damien Eccles. I really love him so much.
And Miss Kelly, he's like, oh, they're so cute. Oh, I'm going to go watch Paradise. Okay, so thanks to what was then a new technology called genetic fingerprinting, Kirk Bloodsworth became the first death row inmate exonerated by DNA. Since his exoneration in 1993, Kirk has found his voice, making it his life's mission to foster change in the criminal justice system, especially regarding issues surrounding wrongful convictions and the death penalty. He has become a vocal opponent of the death penalty, speaking publicly to small groups and large audiences, lobbying politicians, and working with other activists to rehabilitate the penal system. The pinnacle of his work to date came in 2004 when President G. W. Bush signed into law the Kirk Noble Bloodsworth Post-Conviction DNA Testing Program, which provides block grants to states to pay for inmate post-conviction DNA testing.
Like, I think all of that's positive, but if I was Kirk, I would just be like, can we get this associated with someone that's not George W. Bush? Yeah. Like, really fuck that guy.
Yeah.
Because he's been part of the Texas death penalty issues. Like, obviously his state was all about the death penalty. And then you're coming to me and being like, oh, I'm going to like do this initiative in your name. that's against every one of my actions. Like, you know, his actions are not consistent with this.
I don't remember who was the majority at the time, was the House or the Senate.
I don't know.
If it was Democrats, then that makes more sense, and he just has to fucking sign it. Which, I mean, I guess he
right? Yeah, maybe he was forced into it.
Yeah, he could have been like, veto, which... Or maybe he gave him a $5 grant. He's like, here's $10.
Enjoy.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Don't spend it all on one case.
I see what you did there.
Stupid. In his home state of Maryland, Kirk also played an integral part in the successful campaign to repeal the death penalty. In 2003, nearly a decade after Bloodsworth's release, prisoner DNA evidence added to state and federal databases identified the real killer, Kimberly Shea Ruffner.
Of course, his name is Kimberly.
Kimberly.
It's like a boy named Sue.
Yeah, a girl named Kelly. You know? I'm just kidding. Alex, you know. I'm naming my son Brianna.
I'm all behind that.
A month after the 1984 murder, Ruffner had been sentenced to 45 years for an unrelated burglary, attempted rape, and assault with intent to murder. He had, in fact, been incarcerated in a cell 1 floor below Bloodsworth's cell.
Yes, it's crazy.
Oh, my God. So Ruffner arrived in prison just a month after Bloodsworth and knew about Bloodsworth's case, the attempts to win a new trial, and his claim of actual innocence.
He knew everything. He never said anything.
What a fucking piece of shit.
It's so awful.
Or maybe, I mean, I wonder if he knew the girls' names, but like, dude, if you killed...
No, he knew everything.
Oh,
like,
he did
knew everything.
Oh, okay, you fucking piece of shit.
Yeah.
However, Ruffner said nothing to lead Bloodsworth to suspect that Ruffner had killed Don Hamilton. Bloodsworth learned the news from prosecutors shortly before Ruffner was formally charged with the crime on September 5th, 2003. Kirk had said that he and Ruffner knew each other. Bloodsworth was a prison librarian who would deliver books to Ruffner, and they would sometimes even work out together.
Yeah, Bloodsworth was just like, yeah, he spotted me. Like, I spotted him. I mean, he has said that in interviews. Like, they were friendly.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, it wasn't just some guy that he had seen. He really
like worked
hung out with him.
Fuck, dude.
And the guy never said anything.
He's already in there for 45 years.
Just say, like, it doesn't matter. Just, I don't know.
So in 2004, Kimberly Shea Ruffner, who had a history of sexual attacks, pled guilty to the murder of Don Hamilton. Ruffner was near Don Hamilton's apartment complex to smoke PCP. He had just gotten out of jail days before after being acquitted on charges that he had sexually assaulted another girl. Ruffner had also drank a fifth of rum before he saw the 9-year-old girl. The attack was not premeditated or planned. He just happened to see the girl. Ruffner was convicted of Don's murder in 2004 and will spend the rest of his life in jail. At least he fessed up.
Yeah, I mean, at least he's being held accountable for it, because that's just awful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just can't believe that he didn't say anything. Like, of course, I mean, he's a murderer. Why would I think that he's an honest guy that's just like, yeah, I'm going to say something because it's the right thing to do? Yeah. Like, yeah, of course, he's a fucking piece of shit.
Here's my redeeming moment. Let me just
oh my God.
Things right.
So moving on to the next case. On June 4th, 1994, 19-year-old J.C. Taylor was found dead in her bathtub in Palisades, Colorado. Neighbors had discovered a leak in their apartment at 7 a.m. that morning. Upon entering Taylor's apartment 2 hours later, they found her naked body in the bathtub and called the police. According to the medical examiner who examined the body, Taylor appeared to have been strangled by a nylon dog leash or horse lead and had been sexually assaulted shortly before her death. Police focused their investigation on Robert Dewey, who was a 33-year-old biker nicknamed Ryder. Dewey was an addict who had been drawn to the neighborhood by the availability of meth in the area. I mean, that's a pretty bad neighborhood if they're just like, oh, that's where all the meth is. Like, that's where I belong. It's basically Simi Valley.
Pretty much Palmdale.
Yeah.
He was a bike rider that was nicknamed Ryder. That's
like a Harley guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Super simple.
Yeah. Ryder.
You won't forget it. The police and prosecutor began to build a circumstantial case against Robert Dewey. He had initially emerged as a suspect in the case when police heard from several of Taylor's friends that she was afraid of him. Police also learned that Dewey and several of his friends had hid from them when the police came to question them. But I feel like if he's like a biker gang meth head guy, like it's not about the murder. It's just about like either knowing that you have drugs on you or just paranoia from too much drugs. Like, True. I mean, that's kind of, I feel like they could predict that behavior better and see that it's not related to the murder, but who am I?
And she was probably scared of him because he was on meth. I'm scared of every meth head.
Some biker dude that's just kind of tweaked out, like, of course you're going to be a little sketchy around them.
Mm-hmm.
Furthermore, when police later found and questioned him, he initially gave police a fake name.
All right, I would have thought he was guilty. If there's no meth involved, I would be like, this guy's fucking guilty.
Yeah,
like,
I mean...
just right off the bat, guilty.
Yeah, I don't know. Despite this, Dewey ultimately cooperated with the police during the investigation and subsequent interrogations. Dewey admitted he knew the victim and he had been to her house, but denied any involvement in or knowledge of the crime. When he was questioned again, police recovered a t-shirt that belonged to him, which was stained with oil, grease, and blood.
Again, guilty.
I know, but just wait.
Yep.
During the investigation, police recovered the shirt Dewey was wearing when the crime occurred. The shirt had several bloodstains on it. Dewey claimed that it was his blood on the shirt, but police didn't believe him.
Neither do I. I'm just kidding.
Using the methods of DNA testing that were available in the 90s, police tested the blood from Dewey's shirt. The testing confirmed that the blood on the shirt was consistent with Dewey, the victim, and 45% of the population.
That's a terrible fucking test, dude.
Yeah.
Like,
it just seems like, why bother? It's just a 50%. That's 50%, really a 50-50, basically.
So it's 1 out of 2. Like, it's
right. You may as well just guess or flip a coin. Mm-hmm. That's awful. In addition, and also it's just like, you can't rule him out, but you can't convict him based on that, even though they're going to fucking try.
They're going to, yeah.
In addition to testing Dewey's shirt, the state conducted DNA testing on the victim's fingernails and semen from a blanket where she was raped. The testing confirmed that Dewey was not the source of the semen or the DNA found under the victim's fingernails. Despite this, prosecutors continued to pursue him based on other circumstantial evidence.
That should have been enough right there to get him out.
Right.
If it's not your semen and it's not your scraping, like,
it's someone else, like, obviously.
So I know if I ever get raped or murdered, I'm scraping the shit out of someone, dude. I'm gonna just pretend like
you're
I'm a little cat.
Convicted.
Yeah, like I'm a baby kitten that just wants to do those like tiny little scrapes. I'm just gonna scratch the shit out of someone, and then I'm gonna try and hold the cum inside me all. I'm just kidding. I'm just gonna squeeze it real tight. No, I'm just gonna rub it all over my body. Before
oh my god!
Just douse myself so no traces. Just in case some idiot cop like fucks up the scene and like wipes it on his leg.
It's everywhere. It's literally everywhere.
Yeah. I'm covered in it.
Jesus.
And maybe they'll think that they have to convict the man because they're like, what kind of man rubs his semen?
What a horrible, awful dude.
But it was really me.
You're just a genius trying to get his ass convicted.
Yeah.
At Dewey's trial in 1996, the prosecution relied on the DNA results from testing the blood on his shirt, emphasizing that the profile was consistent with the victim's blood, but leaving out the fact that it was also consistent with him and 45% of the population.
Yeah, that's...
awful. The prosecution also emphasized Dewey's suspicious actions during the initial stages of the investigation, even though he eventually cooperated. Mm-hmm. Dewey's defense team asserted that the blood on his shirt was his own blood, not the victim's, and argued that the real perpetrator was the person who left the semen on the blanket and male DNA under the victim's fingernails. The prosecutors countered this by arguing that there must have been a second perpetrator who assisted Dewey in committing the crime.
Touche. Ugh. That's a good comeback. Dude. I'd be so mad. I'd be like, fuck. All right.
Yeah, but it worked, but it's still just like, that's not what happened. The jury found Dewey guilty of first-degree murder and sexual assault. He was given a life sentence with no possibility of parole. At his sentencing hearing, Dewey warned the judge, there's still a killer out there. It's infuriating. Mm-hmm. Dewey's conviction was affirmed when the appeals did not overturn the rulings. The Innocence Project began working on his case in 2007 when Dewey and his appointed post-conviction counsel, Daniel Jaffe, reached out to the Innocence Project for assistance. In late 2009, Joffe and the Innocence Project discovered that Forensic Analytical Sciences retained DNA extracts from the pretrial DNA testing of the blood on Dewey's shirt. FAS retested the evidence using more advanced methods, and this testing definitively excluded the victim as the source of the blood on Dewey's shirt. Furthermore, the DNA of the semen from the blanket matched the DNA from the victim's fingernail scrapings, neither of which matched Dewey.
He's free. He's off right there.
God, just let him go immediately. Mm-hmm. The Innocence Project and Joffe brought this evidence to the attention of the Colorado Attorney General's Justice Review Project, a grant-funded organization tasked with reviewing cases in which DNA evidence could lead to exonerations.
That'd be an awesome organization to work for. I think
that and the Innocence Project is just dream job, and I should just reach out to them and donate and volunteer. Yeah, that's what we got to do.
That would be amazing.
The project agreed to retest several additional items of evidence at the Colorado Bureau of Investigation Laboratory. This testing confirmed the results from the FAS and developed a DNA profile suitable for comparison to the CODIS DNA databank.
Gotta love CODIS.
Yay, CODIS. Yeah. We're all about that. Mm-hmm. That CODIS
or anything
life.
Like it in comparable.
The comparison yielded a hit to another man in the database. That man was already serving a life sentence for a 1989 home invasion, rape, and murder in Fort Collins. After an extensive investigation, the sheriff's department concluded that Dewey was innocent and that the actual perpetrator was the man whose semen and DNA was left at the crime scene.
Well, no shit.
Duh. Like, you should have known that from the beginning, but whatever. On April 30th, 2012, Joffe, the Innocence Project, and the Mesa County District Attorney's Office jointly filed a motion to vacate Dewey's conviction. The court granted the motion and declared Dewey innocent. After serving 17 years in prison, Robert Dewey became a free man. In his civil suit, he was compensated approximately $1.2 million, as he should be.
Yeah.
The same day, the court issued an arrest warrant for the actual perpetrator named Douglas Thames.
Fucking Douglas.
Dewey, who was 51 at the time, now faced the challenge of finding work with a prison record and fixing a back problem that worsened in prison. He also joked that there was a matter of learning about texting, cell phones, and computers.
Which is a joke, but it's like true too.
He was imprisoned at that time where so much technology changed. 39-year-old Douglas Thames, the one who actually committed the crime, was renting an apartment in 1994 on the opposite side of the street, 2 or 3 buildings down from where the 19-year-old J.C. Taylor was discovered, raped, and murdered. Witnesses told investigators over the recent months that Thames' girlfriend at the time was friends with J.C. Taylor, and that Thames and his girlfriend had classes with Taylor at Palisades High. At the time of the DNA exoneration, Thames was serving life in prison without the possibility of parole for his conviction in a 1989 rape and murder of Susan Dahl in Fort Collins. Thames was charged in 2012 for the murder of J.C. Taylor. He was found guilty on charges of first-degree murder, felony murder, and first-degree sexual assault by the Mesa County jury in 2015. Thames was sentenced to a term of life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus 48 consecutive years in prison. The next case we have is one of the longest incarcerations before exoneration. It's not the absolute longest, but it's pretty high up there.
On the evening of March 4th, 1974, a 9-year-old boy sleeping at his home in Lake Wales, Florida, was dragged to a baseball field and raped. Baseball fields are really lit up, too, which I think is really weird.
Crazy.
Like fluorescent, crazy lights.
Like the woods makes more sense.
Yeah, woods. The victim told police that his assailant appeared to have been 17 or 18 years old and had a mustache and bushy sideburns. Definitely, again, 70s and 80s, everyone's got bushy shit.
It's the same style.
According to the victim, the man has said his name was Jim or Jimmy. The victim's uncle thought his description sounded a lot like Jimmy Bain. Police showed the victim 6 photographs of potential suspects, and he chose the one of Bain. However, of the photographs in the lineup, only Bain and one other man had sideburns. So you would pick out of the 2, you have a 50-50 chance. 50-50. Yeah, that's fucked. So it could have just been luck. I mean, just terrible luck. So the boy also told police that he remembered seeing a red motorcycle, which by coincidence Bain owned. That's a little suspicious.
Terrible.
I mean, if he remembers that,
yeah,
that to me, again, they sound guilty at first to me with like the evidence, but
I guess I approach it with the eyes of like knowing that they're innocent.
Yeah,
so I'm like, no.
like, how that's random. A red motorcycle.
I get how the details matched up.
Yeah, it's a really strange coincidence, and but things do happen like that. It's not impossible,
right?
So during the time that the crime was committed, then 18-year-old Bain had just walked home from a party at a friend's house just down the block from his own place in Bartow, Florida. When he walked in the door at 10:30 p.m., he sat down to watch TV with his sister and soon fell asleep. The police showed up at the Bain house to question him on March 5th, 1974. He immediately cooperated with the police questioning and said, "I'm thinking I'm just going to go clear this matter up. I didn't even say anything to my parents or sister."
Yeah, of course. And that's really the telltale sign of an innocent person. Like, you just don't think that it's even possible that someone could think that you did this because you know in your heart and your mind that you just didn't do it.
Yeah. So when you're innocent and you just go along with it, they convict you anyways. But when you don't, when you ask for a lawyer, you look guilty as shit.
Right.
Like, you're just screwed either way. So, let's see. But after 2 nights in the Polk County jail, Bain still didn't know the accusations against him. Which is weird. 2 nights in jail, you should probably know what you're there for, right?
Yeah, that sounds like misconduct.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, they should have let him know.
Yeah, because then you get like a bail amount and based on your whatever you're taken in for. Finally, police told him about the rape of a local 9-year-old boy. Bain informed police that he had been at home watching television at the time of the attack, an alibi that was supported by Bain's sister. Nevertheless, the police arrested him. Bain said, "I told them, y'all have the wrong person, but I knew then from that point on, my life would be totally discombobulated." According to FBI analysis presented at the trial, the rapist did leave semen on the victim's underwear. The trial occurred, however, before DNA testing was available, so Bain could not be definitely tied to the semen. He could, however, match its blood group.
Again, the same thing as the previous one.
Yeah.
Where it's just, you're just going to be with 45% of the population.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, and there's only like, 4 blood groups? So,
right. The percentages on that are awful.
An FBI analyst testified as a prosecution witness that the semen on the underwear was of blood group B. Bain's blood group was AB, but according to the analyst, Bain's group had a weak A and thus could not be excluded from having deposited the semen. This is not the same as a match. It just means that his blood type couldn't be ruled out.
That's just so awful that that's the kind of testing that they had.
Yeah.
To be convicted on that. Ugh.
It's not even the right blood group. It's just that it's half of it. I mean,
it's just part of it.
Yeah, so we can't rule it out, which I guess makes sense, but not really. I mean,
yeah, that's not enough to convict somebody, but they do it.
Mm-hmm. And an expert for the defense testified that Bain's group actually had a strong A, and therefore he could be definitively excluded. Conclusive DNA evidence as used today didn't appear in court until 1985. This is 1974. The rape also occurred in the woods 2 miles from the house where Bain spent most of that night. Again, a really weird coincidence.
Right.
So, Bain logically couldn't have left the party, committed the crime, and arrived at home within the specified time frame. And he had 12 witnesses to testify he attended the party. His defense only called 4, mostly his family. Typically, family members don't make good alibi witnesses because juries believe that they could be biased, just saying what's good for their family member. Why would you, out of 12 witnesses, why would you call most of them being family? Like,
yeah, it just seems like, but also 12. That's not one. That's a bunch of people that are saying the same thing. I know it's one thing to be family, but that's a lot of people.
And they only called a third. They only called a third of those people.
Right.
So that's crazy. They could, out of the third, they could have picked the other 2/3 who were not family and created a stronger case.
Yeah.
I think they mainly convicted me when the victim stood up in the courtroom and pointed at me as the perpetrator. He was crying and everything in the process, Bain said. That seals the case. That's a nail in the coffin right there. He points, he gets up, he's crying, he's overwhelmed. I mean, you sympathize with him and he points at you. Misidentification from an eyewitness accounts for 75% of all convictions later overturned by DNA evidence, according to the Innocence Project.
Yeah, and we mentioned it on the beginning of the show, but it's just like, this is where it really comes into play. I mean, there's a lot of them that have DNA evidence where the technology just hadn't caught up and wasn't good enough. But there's so many where people are just flat out saying this person did it. And that's what gets them convicted, even though it's just not true.
And in a state of shock like that, like, you don't know, like, you don't get...
I can't remember so many things that were important that happened in my day. How am I going to remember exactly what this random person looked like that happened to be walking behind this random apartment building? Yeah. Like, you just don't remember those things accurately.
Exactly.
You know?
And I'm trying, like, and you're trying to block this whole thing out too. If you're being raped, like,
it's traumatic.
You are having an out of body, like, you're trying to disassociate yourself.
Well, but also the witnesses, not just the victim.
The witnesses,
but I mean,
too.
It's just like, it's just too much randomness to really remember. It's not important enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I understand them forgetting it more than someone that's a victim, you know?
Yeah, they only got him on witness testimony, right?
Yeah.
So, in spite of this conflicting serological evidence and Bain's alibi, Bain was convicted of rape, kidnapping, and burglary and sentenced to life in prison. I want to be a serologicalist.
Study bodily fluids.
Serologician. There we go. Yeah, just studying semen all day. The prosecution's case...
I think you already do that.
The taste test. The prosecution's case rested largely on the victim's identification of Bain in the photo lineup.
One of the many things that bothers me about this case is that he got life in prison, but I feel like you constantly hear about white people getting 3 years or 9 years for a crime very similar to this. Just one victim. Me, myself, I'm not minimizing that. I know that that's horrific, one victim. But it seems like the legal system doesn't take that as seriously. And when there's just one person that has been the victim of a white person, they get no time, less than 10 years, every time. But then a black person comes along and does it, and they're life in prison. It makes me so mad. It's just infuriating.
So, over the course of his sentence, Bain spent time in 6 different prisons. His family visited almost every weekend, even when he transferred to Hendry Correctional Institution, almost a 4-hour drive for them.
It's just so sad.
Yeah, Bain earned about $40 a week working as a prisoner welder and doing laundry. Aside from his jobs, Bain also went to school for 27 of his 35 years behind bars. He often played chess to take his mind off his situation. You just have to try to fit into this horrible society. If not, you'll go crazy in there or do something crazy, he said. Bain grew close with many other prisoners, but often waited years to tell them that he was innocent.
That's just crazy to me. I feel like if I was in prison for something that I didn't do, I would just be screaming it all day, every day.
Everyone says it, right?
Oh my God.
Either you're completely bragging about it or you're innocent.
But I guess that maybe that's another telltale sign of someone that's innocent is just being quiet about it. Because so many people in jail are just like, I didn't do it.
Yeah. And you can't believe anyone. I had to know someone before I told them. Anything could go wrong. If they don't believe you, they could get mad, y'all have a fight, and someone winds up dead, he said. Bain admitted that he had multiple fights while in prison just to survive. You can get killed for a look or just bumping into someone. It's a miracle I survived, he said. From his first day behind bars, Bain tried to fight his conviction. He requested his prison transcripts multiple times, a right granted by the Supreme Court, but he neither received them nor heard back from the court. Still, he had chain gang lawyers, or like prisoners that have like legal knowledge. Yeah. He had them write requests to the court for DNA testing. The court denied him all 5 times.
They're just standing in the way of everything. They just don't want him to have justice. They don't want him to have fairness.
Is in the way of justice. Like, it's
so infuriating and devastating.
He said, my first 10, 13, 20 years in there, I thought I would never get up out of there. I thought that even more when I got into the 30s. In 2001, Florida passed a statute allowing cases to be reopened for DNA testing. Bain submitted handwritten motions 4 times seeking such testing, but was denied each time. So that's like 9 times.
God.
His 5th attempt was successful after an appeals court ruled he was entitled to a hearing. So 10 times he's tried to appeal. When arguing for DNA testing, one problem stood in the way. Bain didn't have his court transcripts.
Even after he asked for it.
Like plenty of times.
Years.
Yeah. So this is the worst. After years of requesting them, Bain finally learned, only through the help of the Innocent Project, that the court had lost them. Again, just like destroying evidence and just carelessness by the justice system.
Carelessness or downright corruption. Like, it's one thing to just be like, oh, I forgot to do that. It's another thing to be like, oh, I'm going to get rid of this because you don't deserve to have fair trial. Like,
and these are transcripts. They're papers that should be filed. It's not like
unreal
evidence in a bin where I can see how they might have lost it, like,
not known where it is.
Yeah, but in a big bin, and then, like, you know.
It's someone's job to protect this. Like, it's someone's job to keep track of these things and come up with a filing system and all that. Like, I just think of how people are inept and inadequate and just don't give a fuck enough, you know?
Getting lazy, getting high on the job, protecting evidence. All right, so.
Getting high on the evidence. Maybe that's why it's not there.
It's exactly
like,
why.
I found this coke and this weed, and so now your papers are gone.
Yeah. And I just started, I didn't have any papers, so I just used your papers to roll up my weed.
Ooh, your transcripts?
I smoked those.
Those weren't zigzags? I don't know.
Fuck. With the aid of the Innocence Project of Florida, Bain was finally granted access to post-conviction DNA testing. The state sent the DNA found on the victim's underwear to the DNA Diagnostic Center. This testing excluded Bain as the source of the DNA.
Yup.
The Polk County State Attorney Jerry Hill then joined the defense in a motion to declare Bain innocent. On December 17, 2009, a judge signed the order releasing Bain from prison after 35 years at the age of 54.
That's just terrible. And what he said earlier of just like, oh, the first 10, 20. I'm just like, oh my God, that's so many years.
I would have hung myself, honestly. I can't do that. I don't have that kind of... like, I'm positive, but I'm not that positive, dude.
No way. There's no way I'd get through that. It's just amazing. He's a fucking miracle.
Yeah, and in that environment, too. Like, I couldn't
get in through my regular life.
Yeah, I couldn't be on house arrest for fucking 35 years. Like, how would that even work?
Oh, my God.
The judge said, "You're a free man. Congratulations." And the courtroom erupted into applause. Bain said, "I'm not angry. How can I be? You can't go back," after the hearing in Bartow, Florida. As soon as Bain was released, he used the cell phone for the first time to call his mother. Oh, so sad. So Bain was devoutly religious while incarcerated and stated that he actually feels blessed for this experience, comparing himself to Joseph, a biblical character wrongfully imprisoned before merging with a greater power to create change, which... I didn't know that about Joseph. I don't remember that from my children's Bible.
I really don't remember that either.
But that's like
I'm
Joseph
familiar with the person, but not of that aspect.
Yeah, so Bain received $1.7 million from the state of Florida for his wrongful conviction. So it's about $50,000 every year he spent in prison. His mother also put her house and her car in her son's name, stating, "I want him to have something by himself. He suffered enough."
It's so devastating.
Mom. Bain is a leading advocate for the innocence movement, sharing his wrongful conviction experience from middle schools to colleges across the country. During an event at Florida Southern College, a student asked him what he thought about all the technology he's seen since his release. Bain said that cars and telephones were the most surprising to him. Even though there had been cars before he was incarcerated, he explained that there were none that talked back to me.
That's so cute.
I know. His humility and kindness even extended to the rape victim whose misidentification helped put Bain behind bars. When the two met after his release, Bain apologized for what happened to him.
That's wow.
Yeah, way to go, man. This guy's an upstanding, like, just
He's
amazing.
Inspirational for sure.
I was very, very sorry that had to occur to him at such a young age, Bain said. I know what his family and uncle had to go through to try and prove me guilty at the time. Bain is married, has a son, and is now in the process of writing a book. And I would like to read
I'm gonna
that.
read that.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
He was in school for 27 years out of 35.
It's just, wow.
I really want to hear what he has to say.
I'm sure his book will be really phenomenal. Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
But let's hope it's on Audible because I don't read.
Oh my goodness. So
blind.
The next one is interesting, and we chose to put it in because there's a few twists and turns and flip-flopping back and forth, and it's kind of more of a roller coaster story. On August 15th, 1982, two teenagers, Marilyn Green and her fiancé, Jerry Hillard, were shot and killed near a swimming pool in Washington Park on the south side of Chicago. Porter, then a 27-year-old gang member, was identified by several witnesses, including William Taylor, who had been swimming in the pool at the time of the shooting. Initially, the witness, Taylor, said he had not seen the crime itself, only that he had seen Porter run past shortly after the shots were fired. Eventually, he admitted to have seen Porter actually firing the shots. Ultimately, at least 6 witnesses identified Porter in the shooting, including one who had said he had been robbed by Porter at gunpoint a short time earlier in the same park.
See, this one's kind of tough for me, too, because he is, like, a gang member, so he probably does have, like, violence in his past or whatever.
Right.
But
he's got a history of violence.
You instantly think he's guilty. Of course, if 6 people point out a known gang member...
Yeah.
You're obviously not going to get a fair trial.
I can see why they jumped to conclusions.
Yeah,
I can see how that stacks up against him.
Yeah, it makes sense. If you saw someone running and then all of a sudden you see someone shooting, that's like completely different.
Right.
But yeah, that sucks to be a gang member, dude, because if you really don't do it...
Yeah, you need to not even steal a lollipop because you did everything wrong.
Seriously, you're a scapegoat.
Ugh. Police were given leads pointing towards other suspects, though, including information from Green's mother suggesting that a man named Alstory Simon had killed the pair for drug-related reasons, but they chose to pursue only Porter. Upon hearing that he was under suspicion, Porter went to the police in the hope of clearing his name. So he came forward first. Like, they didn't even have to seek him out, which it just, again, speaks to his innocence because he felt so confident and assured that he would be found innocent.
I'm just going to clear things up. Yeah. I'll see you later.
Oh, my goodness.
And that's crazy for a gang member to go in there to the cop station and be like, you know what? I'm going to clear this up.
I know I didn't do this. I'm just going to let you guys know the truth. Yeah. He was immediately arrested and charged with 2 murders, 1 count of armed robbery, 1 count of unlawful restraint, and 2 counts of unlawful use of weapons. During the short trial, Porter's lawyer reportedly fell asleep.
Oh, no.
And never met with Porter himself until just before the start of the proceedings.
Oh, my God.
Judge Robert Slodowski sentenced Porter to death, calling him a perverse shark. An appeal to the Illinois Supreme Court was denied in February 1986, and an appeal to the United States Supreme Court was denied again in 1987. Porter continued to file appeals in the years that followed, which delayed the execution. In 1995, during the appeals process, Porter was tested to have an IQ of only 51, meaning that he may have been moderately retarded. In light of the new information, another appeal was filed on the grounds that Porter was incapable of understanding his punishment.
If I'm going to fail that test, the IQ test. You're taking a test. I'm just going to...
Not good at tests.
Well, I'm just... If I'm in jail and I need to prove that I'm incapable
to get out of
getting the death penalty, then I'm going to fail that test like I've never failed a test before. I'm going to actively try to be retarded.
Oh my goodness.
Why wouldn't you?
I know. I can understand. But a lot of people try and use that as a defense, and I feel like the system is pretty skeptical of it.
Yeah, now they're like, you're not retarded, we don't care.
Yeah, so I feel like I don't know. I feel like it had to been pretty accurate because they have tried so hard to keep it so accurate because so many people have done that same thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Same thing with the insanity plea.
Absolutely. So. In 1998, Northwestern University professor David Protas investigated the crime as part of a class assignment for the Innocence Project. The students assigned to the Porter case gathered evidence exposing major holes in the prosecution's case. Student Tom McCann and private investigator Paul J. Colino spoke to the witness William Taylor, who in December 1998 recanted his original statements, saying that Chicago police had threatened, harassed, and intimidated him into accusing Porter. Another student noted that the shot had been fired by a left-handed shooter. Porter was right-handed.
I wonder how they knew that. I wonder how they get that.
I mean, it must have been one of the eyewitness accounts or something.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
Yeah. The Cook County State Attorney's Office launched a new investigation into the Porter case. 2 days later, and only 50 hours before Porter was scheduled to be killed by lethal injection, he received a stay of execution from the state Supreme Court, citing research that showed that his intelligence level was too low for him to understand what was going on. His conviction was overturned in 1999 following the discovery of new information by the same Northwestern University students working for the Innocence Project. Anthony Porter was freed from prison 2 days later after 17 years. Jesus. The charges against him were dropped the following month. Why would it take a month to... whatever.
That process at least is out.
Jeez, yeah. On January 29th, 1999, Inez Jackson came forward saying she witnessed her then-husband, Alstory Simon, we talked about previously, commit the crime in retaliation for the victim, Jerry Hillard, skimming money on drug deals. She also said that she had never met or seen Porter before. Inez Jackson's nephew, whose apartment Simon allegedly fled to after the shooting, came forward to corroborate her story. 4 days later, on February 3rd, Simon himself appeared to confess to the crimes on videotape. Alstory Simon was formally charged in September 1999 and pleaded guilty to 2 counts of second-degree murder. He was found guilty and sentenced to 37 and a half years in prison.
Which is a really low time for 2 counts of second-degree murder.
Yeah.
2 counts.
That's not enough. So in 2005, Inez Jackson and her nephew Walter Jackson, who were the witnesses against Alstory Simon, recanted their statements. The explanation that they gave was that the Northwestern University Innocence Project director, David Protess, had promised them money and also promised to help them free their family members from prison in exchange for lying and saying that they had seen Alstory Simon. So his motivation was basically that he wanted to get the convictions overturned and get these people exonerated so it looked better for the Innocence Project and it looked better for the Northwestern University Innocence Project. Alstory Simon also recanted his confession. He said that he was pressured into making a false statement by the Innocence Project as well. He said he was shown a videotape of an actor pretending to be a witness who implicated him in the crime, and he had also been promised by the Innocence Project that he would get a short prison sentence and a movie deal if he confessed. It's just not enough for me to confess to a crime.
Not at all.
Like, movie and a short sentence, you're still going to prison.
Yeah.
You're still a fucking murderer.
I wouldn't trust anyone.
No way. So David Protess from the Northwestern University Innocence Project and Paul Coilino have vigorously denied any wrongdoing. They protest that a number of Simon's claims are false and stand by Simon's guilt. In 2011, David Protess was placed on leave from Northwestern University after school officials found that he had deliberately falsified evidence related to a subpoena for another wrongful conviction case. So he was clearly had a pattern of this, so much so that Northwestern University let him go.
Yeah.
It's apparent that the Northwestern University Innocence Project was more concerned with undermining Illinois' adoption of the death penalty than with identifying the truth of the murders. So they kind of prioritized lying about these cases so they could get their case rates up and so they could fight the death penalty, and that was ultimately their cause.
They wanted another notch under their belt.
Yeah, they would just do anything for it.
Yeah.
Whether it be money or promises and lying and all that. It was so corrupt.
Disappointed in
I know.
Project.
I guess this was probably a bad way to end the episode.
No, but at least it shows you that they can be, they're not all innocent. I mean, they're not all great people. They do the same shit that cops do.
Yeah.
They pay for testimony. They coerce you with shorter sentences. You know, I mean.
Yeah, I just think that this is a situation of the bad apple spoiling it for the bunch. I don't think that most people in the Innocence Project are doing this. I think that it's the case of just one person doing it and maybe a couple corrupt people, but I don't think that's by and large the way that people do it.
Most cops aren't all bad too. We just like to, we just find a lot of cases where they fuck up.
Yeah, I definitely think that that's worth mentioning. Yeah. There's a small percentage of people that are doing bad things and they think they're doing it for the right reason, I think. Yeah. Where they're just like, oh, I want to get the death penalty overturned, or the cops want to put people in jail that they think are not innocent. Yeah. But
it's crazy to me that the people like cops, medical professionals, all the ones that have to be really, really careful with their jobs are the ones with 12-hour shifts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where
That's
after a certain
point.
amount of hours, your brain just can't function right. So it's like, what if that's your last call of the night? Like,
Yeah.
you just want to go home, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I want to go sit in my bed and Netflix. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I get it, but I don't. Like, that we should cut down hours, you know? Maybe they would function a little bit better.
Yeah, I just think that there's no excuse for that kind of behavior.
No, especially if you're going to be a cop, you need to like take your job seriously.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
ultimately, the Cook County prosecutors finally threw out Simon's conviction in October 2014, leaving unanswered questions of who committed the murders. So technically, they're still unsolved.
So they both got exonerated.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a pretty crazy one. On that note, thank you for checking out another episode of Murder Dictionary. Again, it would be greatly appreciated if you would rate, review, and subscribe and give us 5-star reviews. That would be awesome. You can also check us out on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and get some awesome serial killer memes and true crime breaking news. And thank you for listening.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Finding the right pros for home projects can be tough and spark a lot of questions like, how do I find a pro who can help? Will they do a good job? Will I get a fair price? That's where HomeAdvisor can help. From leaky faucets to major remodels, HomeAdvisor connects you to the right pro for the job in seconds and even helps you get a fair price. Read reviews, check project cost guides, and book appointments. Go to HomeAdvisor.com or download the free HomeAdvisor app to start your next project.
And now, a thought from Geico Motorcycle.
It took 15 minutes to take a spirit animal quiz online.
Please be the cheetah. Please be the cheetah.
And learn your animal isn't the cheetah, but the far less appealing blobfish.
Oh, come on.
To add insult to injury, you could have used those 15 blobfish minutes to switch your motorcycle insurance to Geico.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on motorcycle insurance.